Hey everybody, Grumbles here with another Was Under Simulator battle video. Well, we got quite a few new planes in the latest patch 1.70, and the one I was the most excited about, since it was revealed that it would be in the patch, is the Fairey Firefly. Not because I thought it would be such a great fighter, but because it is a very unusual design for a fighter, which I think makes it very interesting. And I really was hoping for either a Fairey Fulmar or a Fairey Firefly in the Fleet Air Arm branch for that reason, and we did get the Firefly, the Mark I and the Mark V. So let's talk a little bit about this plane, both the Mark I and the Mark V variant, before we take a look at a few fights in the Mark V Firefly. So the first thing someone will notice about the Firefly is that it does not really look like a fighter at all, with its long fuselage and the compartment in the rear for a second crew member. So why is that? Well, the Firefly is the successor to the Fairey Fulmar fighter, which uses a very similar layout, but with a Merlin engine and 8 machine guns instead of cannons. So the Firefly is not the first fighter with this layout. Now, the Fairey Fulmar and the Firefly after it were originally designed as long-range fleet defense fighters, and this is where the rather weird layout comes in. The plane needed to be bigger to carry the fuel needed for long range, and since it was supposed to operate on long-range missions over the open ocean, it was assumed that a dedicated navigator/radio operator would be required. That's where the compartment in the rear initially comes in. Also, the plane, especially the FR Mark V, is considered a reconnaissance fighter as well, in which case the rear compartment is used by an observer. Now, that of course made the planes comparably large and heavy for a fighter, which of course had negative influence on the plane's performance. Despite the powerful engine, a Griffin on the Firefly and the Merlin on the Fulmar, the planes are slow compared to single-seat fighters, don't climb well and aren't very maneuverable. Though it has to be said that the lighter Fulmar, which had a larger wing, actually had at least a somewhat low wing loading. The heavier Firefly, on the other hand, not so much anymore. However, when those planes were designed, it was assumed that those planes in their role as a long-range fleet defense fighter would not have any contact with lighter single-seat land-based fighters, only with bombers or reconnaissance planes, or long-range fighters that made similar trade-offs. So those downsides were deemed acceptable. Now, while this turned out to be wrong, the plane did meet single-seat fighters, they still did well and were considered a success. Though the Firefly was of course mostly used as a recon plane or light bomber and attacker after it entered service, and had usually escorts of their own, though they still managed to shoot down planes as well. Anyway, this is where the somewhat weird layout of the plane comes from. Now, that means however that the Firefly, despite its somewhat low battle rating from a historical point of view, will in most cases be outperformed by the single-seat fighters it faces. The Fireflies do have somewhat powerful Griffin engines, but thanks to the heavy weight, the power-to-weight ratio of the planes is still very low. Now, the Mark I can reach close to 1700 horsepower on web, the Mark V 2000, but will overheat quickly. On military power, they are both around 1300 horsepower. So, on military power, the lighter Mark I has a better power-to-weight ratio than the Mark V. Also, with the large airframe of the Fireflies, it of course creates a lot of drag, so the Firefly is much slower than most fighters it will face. And it will also climb and accelerate poorly. Now, the Firefly does have a rather large wing, which keeps the wing loading from getting too bad. On the Mark I, it is roughly between that of the 109 F4 and G2, so the plane can turn with those too. However, it will of course lose energy extremely quickly doing so, so it is not recommended. The Mark V is a bit heavier than the Mark I and has clipped wings, which just improve the speed and roll rate a bit, but with the extra weight and slightly lower wing area, the Mark V will also turn worse than the Mark I, and with the extra weight it loses speed in a turn even faster. The flaps on the Firefly helps in turns of course, but the biggest problems in turns is the fast lose of speed, and the flaps won't make that any better of course. So, when it comes to air-to-air combat, the Firefly is in my opinion one of those planes that are difficult to do well in, since you usually don't have much of an advantage over your opponent other than a good armament, but it is quite rewarding to do well in the plane, if you manage it. In general, with a plane like the Firefly, you of course don't want to be the first person in the fight. You want to surprise your opponent if at all possible. Also, you want to use every opportunity to climb and regain energy, as the plane will lose speed extremely fast in any kind of maneuver. Now, armament-wise, the Fireflies have 4 Hispano cannons. The Mark I has Mark IIs with only 60 rounds per gun though, so how much you will be able to do with those will depend a bit on your luck. If you get good results with a few short bursts, you can get a few kills with one ammo load, but if you are less lucky and you have to pump a bit more fire into one target, you might run out after just one. The Mark V with its Mark V cannons, however, has a very large ammo supply. Both planes can of course also carry a good amount of rockets and bombs, making them decent attackers, but I have not unlocked those yet since I focus on performance upgrades first usually. Well, that's some info on the Fairey Firefly. Let's take a look at 2 battles in the Firefly Mark V. Now, this is one of my first matches in the plane and we are on the Norway map. As I entered the match, I made my way towards the airfield, and on the way there I soon see some activity over it. I can see some AA fire and a few planes that appear to be fighting. A fight already in progress is of course good for the Firefly, as there is a good chance to jump an opponent and take him out of the game without the performance deficiencies of the plane playing too much of a role. As I get closer, I can see some green tracers coming from a German plane, apparently attacking a friendly. It appears this plane dives away after the attack, followed by a friendly. I consider going after them for a second, but then I can see another plane on slightly higher altitude, which is a bigger threat, so I focus on this one first, and as I come closer it turns out to be a Bf 109. I try to get a hit in a deflection shot as the 109 flies past me and pulls up after Spitfire, but my first salvo misses and I pull up after the 109 to get it off the Spitfire's tail, and this time I get some good hits and can take the 109 out of the game. However, here you can see the rather bad energy retention of the plane in turns. Since I missed my deflection shot and could not pull up right away, but had to turn after the 109 to take it out, I lost quite a bit of speed, and I'm now already pretty slow and not very high after just one attack. So I have to work on getting some altitude back, and I circle the area while climbing a bit. I eventually start to move in the direction of the friendly fleet, planning to climb back to altitude over it, a bit away from the action and hoping the AA would give me some early warning in case enemy planes show up. However, as I look back towards the island, I can see another fight going on there on pretty low altitude, and I come around to go there in case help is needed. I do, however, don't get very far. I am attacked by a 109 coming down from higher altitude. The 109 is climbing back up behind me, and I come back around to meet his attack when he comes back down. I pull up at first to see if I might be able to get a shot at the 109 if it doesn't manage to turn enough to get guns on me, but I can see that this won't happen. I roll and turn out of the way, just in time, and I only take a glancing hit. The 109 flies past me and loops back around, passing below me, and I try to get a deflection shot as he does so, but I fire a bit too late and don't get a hit. The 109 goes back up and I try to keep an eye on it. I also look back quickly to check my rear, but the lower portion of my view is blocked and a second attacking 109 hidden by the death zone in my rear visibility. When I do see it though, I go defensive using the pretty decent roll rate of the Firefly. As I look back I can see a 109 moving away, and I assume the attacker broke off his attack, but since I'm not 100% sure that it is the same plane and the rear visibility of my plane isn't too great, I keep up my defensive moves a bit longer to make a more difficult target, and also because this shifts the death zone in my rear visibility, increasing the chance to spot the target behind me. But the 109 is indeed off my 6 and I'm clear for now. But as I come back around I can see that friendly planes have arrived, and I make my way back towards the fight to help out. I see 2 planes coming my way and pass below me, a Spitfire following a Bf-109, and I roll around to keep an eye on them in case the Spitfire needs help, but he gets the Bf-109. As I look back in front again I notice some AA fire above me, indicating an enemy plane, but with the poor climb rate of my plane there's not much I can do about it from here. I think about leaving the area and climb back and come back with more altitude for a second, but as I look back I can see some more AA fire behind me shooting a target on lower altitude, and since this is where the Spitfire went, I come around to see if it is under attack. And indeed I can see a German plane pulling up and then coming around diving in the direction of the Spitfire. It's a Focke-Wulf 490, and I fire a deflection shot as he comes down in front of me and apparently turning after the Spit. I get some hits, but no major damage it seems. The 190 is pretty slow for maneuvering though, so I can follow it and get lead for another burst and get a few more hits, and then the third burst finally finishes the 190 off. I pressed the nose down after the attack to build up some speed and check my rear in case an enemy plane approached me as I was attacking the 190. After all, there should still be at least one Bf-109 in the area, most likely on higher altitude. I do slowly move away from the fight after that, and I hope I can now finally work on getting some altitude and speed back, but it seems I still won't get the chance to do so. I again can see some AA fire on slightly lower altitude, but I can't see the plane that is being fired upon. The AA fire does seem to get closer though, so I turn around trying to fight the enemy plane that is causing it. However, I can't spot the plane, a PF-109, in time, and it is passing behind me and attacking the Spitfire. The Spitfire turns around and comes my way again, with the PF-109 in tow. I try to get the nose up to fire at the 109 head on as they come back around, but after turning around twice I don't have the speed to keep the nose up and aim properly, so instead I start to turn around to point in the right direction when the PF-109 comes past me. The Spitfire turns hard to the right and the PF-109 is not following him and instead diving away. I decide to fire a long-range burst after the PF-109 and I get a hit that damages the 109, but not enough to take it out of the game. I dive after it a bit, hoping the 109 might start evasive maneuvers allowing me to catch up, but it is not. Now I can't catch the PF-109, however I can see two more planes in front of us and I figure maybe the 109 tries to attack one of them as it passes, slowing down in the process, so I keep following him for now. And as the PF-109 reaches the other planes in front of us, he is changing course and going after another Firefly, a Mark I, which turns out of the way in time. The 109 turns to the left, but those maneuvers gave me the chance to get closer again. As we pass over the hill, I'm almost close enough to attack. A Mark I Mustang is also attacking the PF-109, coming in at high speed, but it seems he misses and breaks off before he overshoots. The PF-109 pulls up after the Mustang broke off, slowing down in the process, giving me a chance to fire a burst, which takes off his wing. Now, with this enemy down and my engine overheating, I do finally want to get away from the fighting to cool down the engine and get back to altitude, so I start to move out over the sea while throttling back, hoping there's finally enough of a lull in the fighting to get that done. But again, I don't get very far. After just a little bit, I can suddenly see tracers flying by my canopy and I take a hit in the wing. There's a Focke-Wulf 190 behind me. I take evasive action, but the damage to my wing is taking its toll, and as I pull out I can't roll properly anymore and I can't turn out of the way of the second attack. So this is it for this fight. Let's take a look at another one I played a bit later with a few more unlocks. So this battle takes place on the Ruhr map. I spent a bit of time at the start of the match to climb after takeoff, but I did not get very high when I see some tracers close to one of our auxiliary airfields, and I moved that way. I can spot a few planes and both friendly and enemy tracers, so there is a fight going on, but I am still too far away to tell who is who. I can see two planes low moving from left to right on the deck. It's a Spitfire chasing a PF-109 and the Spitfire finishes off the 109. And then a few planes are pulling up in front of me over the river. The highest one is another PF-109, but a Typhoon climbs after it and gets the 109. I can however see a second one to the left, apparently going after a friendly plane, so I go after this one. It appears the 109 is following a Typhoon down and they are in a slight turn as they descend. The Typhoon then tightens up its turn to the left and so is the 109. I line up its flight path and fire a burst and get the 109's wing. The 109 goes down, and this time I did not have to maneuver a lot for the kill, so I can use my speed to pull up and get some altitude back. However, I can see a plane pass below me as I pull up and it looks like a Focke-Wulf 190, so I loop around and go after it, hoping with me being higher I can build up enough speed to catch up to the Focke-Wulf 190. However, just looping around has cost me some speed, so I'm not that fast, and it seems the Focke-Wulf 490 had a good amount of speed which it could turn back into altitude, so I can't catch up to it right away. It does however look like the Focke-Wulf 490 is maneuvering, so maybe I can still get close if he loses speed in maneuvers. There's however also a Typhoon going for the Focke-Wulf 490 and he is faster than me. So with the Typhoon already going for the Focke-Wulf, I change plans and concentrate on giving the Typhoon cover if he gets attacked while he's going for the Focke-Wulf 490. The Focke-Wulf 490 does a split S and they pass below me, and here I could have slotted in behind the Focke-Wulf 490 as it passed below me, but again two planes going after the same plane is a waste and dangerous if there are still other enemy planes around, so I just keep an eye on them. The Typhoon sticks with the Focke-Wulf 490 and as they come around again manages to get a few hits on target and shoots it down. With this Focke-Wulf 490 going down, I go back to climbing and regaining some altitude. However, I can soon see another Focke-Wulf 490 going after the Typhoon, and I come back towards them. I try to get the Focke-Wulf 490 from the front as it comes down behind the Typhoon, but I don't get my sights on target in time and I shoot past the 190. The 190, however, also overshoots the Typhoon and is diving away, with the Typhoon going after it. I'm not fast enough to follow the Focke-Wulf 490 directly if it just flies away, but the Typhoon manages to stay close enough to force the 190 in some defensive maneuvers, slowing them down, so I can stick with them. So I go back to what I was doing before and I try to stay above and a bit to the side of the Typhoon to cover it, to go after enemy planes that might come in to help the Focke-Wulf 490, which I assume has called for help by now. Also, the Focke-Wulf 490 is using its roll rate well to defend itself, and I'm in a position to attack if the Typhoon overshoots the Focke-Wulf 490. The Typhoon gets closer and closer to the Focke-Wulf 490, which keeps up its defensive maneuvers, and as they are crossing the river, it appears the Typhoon gets a hit on the 190. But it's not out of the fight yet, and now it seems the Typhoon has overshot the 190, so I move in. The Typhoon and 190 have pulled up a bit, so I can get closer quickly and fire a burst into the Focke-Wulf 490. The first one misses, but the second one hits and the 190 loses its tail. Now, with the 190 going down and my engine overheating, I have to throttle back a bit, and I start to move back towards the auxiliary airfield, to either climb over it back to altitude, or maybe go for a quick landing to get back to full ammo. The Mark V Firefly has a large ammo supply, but having the full amount of ammo still doesn't hurt. But as I'm on my way back and I look to the left, I can see a Bf-109 coming in and I have to go evasive. I first roll to the left in a narrow barrel roll, using the decent roll rate of the Mark V Firefly, and then back to the right. The Bf-109 overshoots and there's a Spitfire also in the area. Now I turn after the Bf-109, a G2 it seems, but the Mark V doesn't quite have the turn rate to get lead on the Bf-109, and I'm losing speed, so I pull up a bit to go in a bit of a high yo-yo to maybe cut the Bf-109 off before I am too slow to do something like this. Not being used to the bad energy retention, I get almost too slow and stall the plane anyway, but I would have managed to get the nose on the Bf-109. However, the 109 is moving away and I have to go back to cooling down my engine, so I can't follow, so I start to move back towards the airfield. And I do eventually get there and decide to climb a bit instead of landing, and after gaining some altitude I join a few friendly planes that are in a fight. I take a hit as a 109 flies through our formation at the beginning and take some damage to the elevator, but the damage is not so bad. Now I would have liked to climb a bit more before entering the battle, but this is as high as I got before stumbling into it, and now since I'm already here, I of course want to help out my team. I can see a Bf-109 going after a Typhoon. The Typhoon is pulling up and the Bf-109 following, and I try to get my guns on the Bf-109. Another Typhoon is also going after the 109, but then I can see some traces to my right, another 109. I switch targets and try to get the shot as it passes in front of me, but my nose is not aligned quite right, and the Bf-109 passes in the blind spot created by the bar of the canopy. I was not fast enough to follow the Bf-109 as it pulled up in front of me, but I keep an eye on it as it loops back down behind me. Now the Bf-109 looped back down and goes after a Typhoon, but a second Typhoon slots in behind the Bf-109 and the 109 turns and is coming my way again with the Typhoon directly behind it. And I figure I can get a few hits in from the front as the 109 passes above me and maybe take the Bf-109 out. Now, after this attack I make a bit of a mistake though. I should have pushed the nose down after the attack, but I thought the Typhoon was closer to the 109, so I didn't do that, making this attack a little bit more interesting than I generally like. Still, the Typhoon finishes the 109 off. So with this Bf-109 taken care of, I come around to look for more threats, and I can soon spot a captured LA-5 diving down to my right and then passing below me. So as he passes below me, I roll to the left and go after the LA-5, but I can soon see that there are already two friendly planes after it and closing in, so I start to pull back up, and just as I do so I can hear another plane pass behind me, a Bf-109. So I roll back to the right and try to slot in behind the Bf-109. I do get behind it, but the 109 is much faster than I am and pulling up. My plane is a pretty stable gun platform though, so I try to fire a few long-range shots after the 109 before I get too slow to do so. I don't get the hit though, and I break off before I get too slow. I get the nose down and dive to build up some speed and move away from the area a bit. I am now lower than the rest of the planes it seems, so I think about leaving the area, climb and come back with altitude. But then I can see a few planes behind me diving down to lower altitude, so I decide to come around and go there. To my left I can see a Spitfire following something down, but whatever it is, it's already down it seems, so I continue moving towards the planes in front of me. I can see only one enemy plane there, the LA-5, still chased by friendly planes it seems. I keep an eye on the LA-5, but with so many planes already behind it, I don't want to join this chase and I pull back up. And just when I do so, I can see some tracers to my right. A 109 is coming in behind the planes chasing the LA-5. So I line up its flight path and fire a burst as it passes in front of me and get a good hit. And the BF-109 goes down. Well, and the last plane on the enemy team, the LA-5, is finished off shortly after, so this is it for this fight. Well, a few thoughts on the Fairey Firefly. Well, as I have said, in air-to-air combat you will usually be forced into a more of a support role, since the plane has trouble keeping up with single-seat competition, but I think it is also rewarding to do well in the plane in this role. And the plane is just something different and makes for a nice change of pace every now and then. Well, and this is it for this video. As always, I hope it was entertaining, thanks for watching and maybe I'll see you next time.